Glaciers in the Cascades are shrinking. Ocean acidification could threaten native species. And hotter temperatures are forcing Washington farmers and winemakers to adapt.
Do you believe in climate change? And I said, I don't have to believe in climate change. It's here. Belief has nothing to do with it.
This is The Tipping Point, where we examine the key factors threatening the Pacific Northwest ecosystem, as well as climate change solutions that could prove vital to Washington state.
The environment is the spine for the Methow Valley, the reason for its existence, for its preservation, for its survival. You don't have to look too far back in the history books to see how Valley residents blocked a major multi-million-dollar alpine ski resort, citing the environment. To know how the people in this remote spot valued their way of life and the outdoors. Today, it is a winter destination, a rural training ground for Nordic Olympic skiers.
The trail network definitely plays a huge role.
With the state's only permanent outdoor ice rink.
You can do pretty much every Olympic sport here but curl.
Right. And we're working on that, actually.
The 2,000 full-time residents depend on the weather as an economic engine.
It's an essential cog and hub to not just recreation here, but also the economy and how people can benefit and survive here.
So it should be no wonder.
We definitely worry about it.
No question.
We definitely pay attention to it.
About the biggest threat to the Methow.
Do you believe in climate change? And I said, I don't have to believe in climate change. It's here. I know it's here. I've got the evidence. Belief has nothing to do with it.
Alan Faunestock has lived here for years.
Most of our brush trucks are like this one.
And served as a volunteer firefighter.
Climate change, I mean, it's clearly a huge issue.
He was also here in the summer of 2021, when the open space, famed for the athletes chasing Olympic rings, looked more like a scene from Lord of the Rings.
So the fire had jumped the ridge there and was coming down this.
It actually started on this side of the ridge, down that way.
The Cedar Creek and Cub Creek fires combined to burn more than 125,000 acres, more than the square mileage of Seattle and Tacoma combined, smothering the valley with smoke, closing Highway 20, damaging the trail system, and threatening the Sun Mountain Lodge Resort, a major employer that had to close its doors as firefighters fought back the flames. It is still standing, but the scare has provided daylight on new needs.
Basically, it comes down to, I need water, I need it right now, I need it as quickly as possible. And we don't have it up here.
Faunestock is raising money to tap a well near Mazama, which could fill fire trucks quicker. And the nonprofit Methow Trails Association is working on a Plan B.
It's not just lack of snow, it's more extreme summers. The urgency's a lot more when a fire touches half your network. It's real, and it's here, and it's consistent. Each year, it's a consistent presence in our community.
Executive Director James DeSalvo says it could involve rerouting the trails to higher elevations.
Going higher, right? And so we've been working with the Forest Service about how to do that.
It could also involve plans to rely on less snow.
Here at the Loop Loop Ski Bowl just up the road from Winthrop and Twist, a place that's been around since the late 1950s, they are hard-pressed to think about a winter quite like this one.
I cannot remember a February that was this warm. It's come into stark focus.
The Loop, as the locals call it, claims average snowfall has been 150 inches. This year, there has been roughly a third of that.
It's just kind of melting away on us.
The bowl has been closed to downhill skiing for most of the month. The patches of dirt exposing an immediate need for the community-funded spot to develop a long-range action plan, according to Executive Director Brent Nurse.
I think in order for us as an organization to continue, we definitely need to expand and make sure that we have that we're offering activities and experiences all year round. So we are working with some other organizations to expand the mountain biking opportunities here.
Protecting the future will also mean at the same time protecting the environment, what has been the backbone of this community for decades, and despite the change in course, will need to continue to be to keep the Methow standing for years to come.
It's very clearly changing.
Glaciers. They are another indicator of our changing climate. At more than 14,000 feet high, many of those glaciers are found here, high on Mount Rainier.
The entire mountain turns red. It's late summer and there's been melting. And when the entire mountain turns blue, that's when you have a lot of snowfall.
These top-down images taken by 2 satellites in stereo from 2014 through 2017. It allows scientists to quickly measure the glaciers on Mount Rainier. The images include 2015, the winter of record-low snowpack. What shows up as black is rock.
Not just measuring the surface, but trying to understand why the surface is changing.
Assistant Professor David Sheen plays an important role in understanding our shrinking glaciers, but be careful about making assumptions about his role in climate change.
I'm not a climatologist, no, I'm a remote sensing expert.
So a lot of this glacier work is happening here on the campus of the University of Washington in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. From the University of Washington to the National Park Service, which for a century has documented changes in glaciers from Mount Rainier to the Olympics to North Cascades National Parks. This is Banded Glacier in the North Cascades in 1960. By 2016, it is largely reduced to a lake. This was Lillian Glacier in 1905 in the Olympic Mountains. By 2010, it's gone. Anderson Glacier also in the Olympics in 1936, and finally 2015. While scientists have been documenting the shrinking areas covered by glaciers in the 3 national parks for over a century, the rate of melt and loss has accelerated over the past 40 years. In Olympic National Park, 43% of what was there in the 1970s is gone by 2015. The North Cascades losing nearly 20%, most of that since 1977. Mount Rainier lost 14% since 1971, but consider that much of its glacial ice is at a much higher and colder altitude. Yet even there, lower-level glaciers have suffered more significant loss, say glaciologists with the National Park Service.
Here on the left is an image from 1959, and here on the right an image from 2014. And in 1958 or 59, you can see the glacier extended down to South Cascade Lake here.
Max Stevens is a glaciologist. He's with the U.S. Geological Survey, and one glacier in particular in the northern Cascades is a benchmark. Ironically, it's called the South Cascade Glacier.
So South Cascade Glacier is about twice the size of Green Lake, and it's about 650 feet thick, so that's more or less the height of the Space Needle. And each year we're taking about 2 feet off of the top of that.
In 2004, we loaned a small camera to scientists making their late summer visit. And this is the meltwater in a particularly bad year. South Cascade Glacier is one of 5 benchmark glaciers the agency has been closely studying, this one for over 60 years. 3 other glaciers are in Alaska, one is in Montana. But it's what's learned on these glaciers that tells a bigger story.
So here's a year that it had gained some mass, but on the whole, the mass has decreased.
But for the Geological Survey, they are also studying the inside of the glaciers, drilling holes, weighing ice, and setting up weather stations to get a year-round picture.
The glaciers are a big part of the water resources in the Northwest.
Scientists say there are 2 important aspects of glacial measurement: how long they are, the area covered, and how thick and heavy they are. Sheen is using drones along with satellites to map that all out with precision over a much wider number of glaciers.
So combining the LiDAR measurements, the laser measurements with the camera measurements will allow us to make the most detailed observations of our glaciers yet. We're measuring very precise changes in the glacier surface over time. And what we can do with that is we can take that information and figure out how much ice and snow exists in the system.
He can now even measure snow levels from old photos taken from airplanes.
We call this the Digital Glacier Time Machine.
In Washington, glaciers matter. On the Skagit River, glacial melt accounts for 12% of the river's flow. That cold water is critical for salmon, especially in the summer. It also helps generate electricity. Glaciers, part of our ecosystem, extending down from high up in the mountains, and they are in trouble. As snow piles up through another decent winter,
Go ahead and put these on.
Scott Petit dons his snowshoes.
Haven't worn these things for a year, better.
He works for a federal agency that measures snow, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And at a snow measuring site across Highway 2 from the Stevens Pass ski area, he's showing us how those measurements are taken by hand. But no, for the most part, snow measurement is mostly automated these days. The slots in the tube show the snow depth.
Looks like about 78 inches of snow. Oh, there it is.
It's also how much that sample weighs.
What these numbers mean is that tells us exactly how much water content is in this snow tube, which is how much water you're going to have if you melted the snow right now and it ran off into the rivers and streams.
I've been going out on these surveys with Scott for years, usually around the 1st of April when the snowpack is at its peak. This was 2011.
114.
He's been at this for decades.
And so working for the agency, I was able to kind of work my way into it, learn the hydrology side of it. And, you know, I've been doing it for 30 years now.
NRCS, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, everybody said, okay, this is for farmers, but this isn't just for farmers.
Absolutely not. It's for everybody that relies on water. 70 to 80% of our surface water here in Washington comes from mountain snowpack and runoff. And so it's important for fish, it's important for municipal water supply, power generation, and the farmers.
We have the biggest quantity of quote-unquote warm snow. So we got a lot of water, you know, it's the Northwest, right? And a lot of that water is stored in snow at temperatures close to the freezing point. So a little bit of warming makes a big difference.
Guillaume Mauger is a climate scientist at the University of Washington's Climate Impacts Group. We spoke along the ship canal on campus. I was the one overdressed. It's in the 50s.
I thought it was going to be cold, but...
It's February 9th.
I know. Yeah, doesn't make sense.
It shouldn't be this warm. Is this climate change that we're existing, or is this a freak day?
I mean, it's always the hard question, isn't it? I mean, it's probably, I think the answer is yes, as always, right? It's both.
In this graphic, the Climate Impacts Group shows our historic pattern: snow in blue, rain in green, and a mix of both in red. 2 decades from now, it's expected to look like this: less snow, more mix. In 60 years, rain rules.
One of the ways that we talk about it is we talk about whether or not we're in a system that's rain dominant or snow dominant, right? And that just means, do you get a lot of water stored in your snowpack in winter or very little at all? And the projections you're talking about show that most of the state goes to being rain dominant by the end of the century. So meaning there's very little effect of snowpack on the kinds of things we care about.
Is this a view of our future? This was the same snow site I just took you to back in April of 2015, when snow should have been at its peak. There was less than 20 inches. That 2014-2015 winter was a record low.
We have never measured this low amount of snow since we've been measuring snow.
Snowpack isn't just about how deep the snow gets. It's about how much area it covers. And as the world warms, there will be snow, but it will be concentrated at higher elevations where there's less real estate. There's a lot of anxiety that some February we're going to come up here and there's not going to be much to look at.
And that can happen, just like 2015. But at this point in time, in the climatology that we have, those are anomalous years. Right. So they're out there, okay? So you can't really look at a year like this and positively say, this is going to be the future. Maybe it will be. Maybe things will turn around. We don't know yet that for sure.
In 1999, it was a record high.
I've seen 20 feet of snow up here, which is the height of that tower there. And years ago, I think that was in that 1998, 1999 record-setting year that I measured 20 feet of snow up here. That's the last time that I've done that. And again, that was an anomaly.
Actually, with snowpack, really what we've seen already is really significant.
Petit says things started to shift in the 70s. He's not convinced we're going to run out of snow, but low years are coming closer together.
You know, you look at the next couple of decades, we're seeing acceleration. It's going to continue through this century.
Patia is not a climatologist, but he's aware of the risks.
And I think it's a question that society as a whole is going to have to work together to help solve, whether it means building more reservoirs or groundwater recharge systems like they are starting to do around the state in places. And, you know, things like that, we have to have a conscientious effort to doing that.
If you didn't know it, this could be a major construction project in downtown Seattle, but it's not. Instead, we're in rural Kittitas County on the drier side of the state, and that thin meandering object below is an irrigation canal.
You are looking at a climate change adaptation strategy. In effect, right now, we are preparing for a future without snowpack.
Urban Eberhardt manages the Kittitas Reclamation District. All in, it incorporates over 300 miles of canals and what are called laterals going to individual farms. His own experience dates back to the days as a farm kid and part of the county called Badger Pocket.
Starting when I was very young, irrigating pear trees, apple trees, alfalfa. That was my job with my other family members growing up, was irrigating.
The district was established in 1911, but has roots dating back to the 1870s. Kittitas County, like the rest of the basin along the Yakima River, is in the rain shadow of the Cascades. That means it's dry country. Yet from the apples on your table to the hops in your beer to the wine in your glass, irrigation made this area bloom with some of the most valuable crops in the country, even the world.
This geomembrane liner is rolled out into the canal, and it is then sealed together at each connection point, and this is what keeps the water from leaking out of the canal. The concrete is in place to protect the geomembrane.
In other words, miles of canals like this are being lined with plastic to stop as much as a third of the water from leaking and seeping into the soil. Back in the old days, with reliable snowpack, nobody worried about that. They do now. If you didn't do this, what's the risk?
If we were not doing this here and in other parts of the Yakima Basin, we wouldn't have enough water. We would not be able to make the deliveries. This is critical to do this. Our goal is to save 100,000 acre feet of water annually.
You'll hear that term a lot in this part of the state, acre feet. What does that mean? It means enough water to cover 1 acre a foot deep. In the words of people who aim to educate us non-farmers, that's 326,000 gallons, or enough water to flood a football field a foot deep.
Well, this is the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. So this is a comprehensive plan for the basin. It's ecosystem restoration. So we're looking at fish passage, habitat restoration, but we're also looking at water supply.
Wendy Christensen is a civil engineer with the Bureau of Reclamation, a federal agency whose job it is to manage water in the West.
Cle Elum, Cochise, and Ketchlis.
She's hauled these maps and visual aids around a public meeting after public meeting in multiple counties.
So for the Yakima project, we rely heavily on snowpack, and we usually call it our 6th reservoir.
The Bureau of Reclamation claims about $4.5 billion worth of agricultural products come from the Yakima Basin. And that doesn't even include water needed for fish and for municipal water supplies. 3/4 of the water is gathered and stored in 3 large lakes, one of which you see driving along I-90, Lake Ketchlis. Then there's Lake Cochise, and east of that, Cle Elum Lake. Part of the plan is to store more water in Cle Elum by raising its level 3 feet and try and pump out more water from deep in Lake Cochise that's currently not reachable, but only in a drought emergency. Over in the Natchez River system, there are options to raise Bumping Lake to store as much as 3 times the water it can handle now. But the plans are not without opposition.
We've been trying to right-size additional storage. And storage, as you may know, can be very controversial. I mean, we have folks at Bumping that have cabins up there that are concerned about losing their recreational area. At Cochise, we have folks that are concerned about us drawing down that reservoir another 200,000 acre feet and what that might mean to their recreation around the reservoirs.
But what about creating a new lake, a reservoir, where none currently exists? This is Weimer. The only sign it's here across the Yakima River, denoting a siding on the old Northern Pacific Railroad. As envisioned, once dammed, this area could hold another 162,000 acre-feet of water.
We've been considering Weimar since the 1980s.
Really?
Yeah. Bumping, we have feasibility analysis that went back to the 1940s.
Wendy Christensen says there have been 11 drought seasons since federal management of water was established here almost a century ago. She cites 6 in just the last 30 years. But when you ask just about anybody who's involved in snowpack and irrigation, one year stands out as the start of it all. A year that Urban Eberhardt remembers back on the farm. What have you seen that has raised the alarm about snowpack?
So in the 1977 drought was the first time that everybody really noticed something was going on, even though we saw an indication in 1973. We have seen the changing weather patterns become more frequent and for a longer duration.
Across multiple agencies and entities, federal, state, local, tribal, and private, the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan is expected to cost between $3 and $5 billion to implement. The work has already started.
This time of year, we kind of call it scratch fishing. Those are some dandies right there.
Commercial fishing is more than a career for Brian Mackey.
That's a big crab. It's like my hashtag, this water's in my blood. I love it. One nice one.
Even after 42 years.
Nice big crab.
Even in a Puget Sound winter.
Some people think you're crazy, but I love it. I just do. I can't help myself.
The crab he and deckhand Cody Carson are catching near Lopez Island.
Somebody picked that one.
Are crucial to industry throughout the Pacific Northwest.
And we're at $7.50 a pound right now. A nice big crab like this is worth $25.
Dungeness crab are an iconic species here. They are the single most valuable species fishery on the West Coast.
That's why Washington Fish and Wildlife researchers are studying whether ocean acidification could threaten their growth.
Scientists say that in the 200 years since the Industrial Revolution began, more carbon dioxide has been released up into the atmosphere. And they say that about 30% of that has been absorbed by the ocean.
As carbon dioxide is absorbed, chemical processes change the pH level of the ocean, making it more acidic, and reduce the materials certain species need to build their skeletons and shells.
Okay, this one's a little soft. Buyers don't want them because the shells don't got a lot of meat in them. So you toss them back and let them get hard.
Corals are some of the most sensitive organisms to ocean acidification, and so they're really sort of the canary in the coal mine. They can give us this first look at how ocean acidification is going to change lots of different organisms.
University of Washington researchers are comparing coral samples saved from a research cruise in the 1890s to the same species today.
We can learn more about our role as humans in ocean acidification, but also better understand the pace of acidification.
And so that can help us plan where are the places that are most likely to be refuges, where can we put energy into sort of protecting places.
A hopeful focus on the future drives their work, and that of Washington Fish and Wildlife. Puget Sound shellfish manager Aaron Default says so far, their research does not show adult Dungeness crab in danger.
Juveniles, however, seem to be pretty susceptible to ocean acidification.
Default says this is concerning, but not yet a tipping point for changes at the fishery.
It is something we are actively thinking about and needing to consider in the future. It's not something at this point in time that drives our management.
For now, they say, their management remains focused on sex, size, and seasons.
See how he's just big enough? It fits tight on there. That's just legal, that crab.
Setting out rules about which crabs fishermen like Mackey can catch. But they'll keep monitoring the waters that form the identity of the Pacific Northwest.
I think to a lot of the communities on the water, it's a huge part of, almost I guess you could say, heritage for a lot of places.
And the lifeblood of industries like this one.
Dustin Tobin and his crews at Precept Wine Brands are using the winter months to remove grapevines that no longer produce quality fruit, pulling the vines out one by one from the ground they were planted in the early 1990s. Around the time grape growing became popular in the region.
California is looking at us like you guys are nuts. It's way too cold up here.
Once considered too cold, rising temperatures have forced wine growers to adjust. Between 1895 and 2011, the Pacific Northwest warmed by about 1.3 degrees.
It's how we react to the weather, and we try and react on a proactive way.
They're learning to work with a limited water supply during extreme heat, like the record-breaking highs seen last summer.
We just rotated the water every 6 hours. What got water on a Monday from noon to 6, which is the hottest part of the day, got water on Tuesday from 6 p.m. to midnight.
Wine grapes don't need a lot of water, about a third less than apples, but wine making is as much of an art as it is a science. Each grape grower reacting to climate change differently.
We're hiding the fruit with the canopy. We didn't used to do that. We used to expose it. Our row orientation is changing a little bit.
Dick Boucher has been growing wine grapes in Yakima Valley for 41 years.
I never experienced 150 degrees in my life.
He worries even with water management, warmer temperatures in the mountains means even less water stored as snow, impacting the reservoirs servicing the Yakima Valley, like the ones seen along I-90.
Nothing's been built since before World War II, and yet there's way more water demand. And at some point, that's going to catch up with us.
While harvest was down by 25% last year, cherries 20%, and apples at least 5%, some experts say the biggest threat is still to come. Last year, Washington saw 1,191 DNR fires, the most in the past 10 years.
The number of fires and the amount of smoke has definitely become most intense.
Dr. Wade Wolf says the result is smoke taint.
It kind of gives the wine a ashtray or cigar butt type character.
Last fall, Washington State University announced it was part of a $7.6 million grant to study smoke taint and its impact on wine, teaming up with scientists up and down the West Coast.
There were fires in California, Oregon, and Washington going on simultaneously.
But that research is new, and it could take time for scientists to find solutions, leaving winemakers worried whether your glass is half empty or half full. The taste could be different.